Good morning, everybody. The EMA has the pleasure to welcome all of you here today for this EMA Info Day on Brexit regulatory preparedness for centrally authorized products. Like yesterday, we have people attending here in person and remotely. The notification of the UK withdrawal from the European Union will have an impact on the medicines regulatory system. And we, regulators and marketing authorization holders, have the responsibility to ensure preparedness for the benefit of animal health. And the aim of this event today is to inform companies working in the veterinary field on EMA Brexit preparedness activities and to highlight the impact that the UK withdrawal from the EU will have on centralized veterinary applications and marketing authorizations, and to address questions from participants on the available guidance. I think it is important to recall that today's event is focused on centralized procedure and that therefore the EMA and the Commission will not be in a position to address any questions relating to MRP, DCP or national procedure. However, we do have in the room today members of the CMDV CVMP that will participate as observers in this meeting because some of the items that will be discussed here today are also relevant to them. We also have the pleasure to have the European Commission via teleconference today. So we have Christian Siebert, Head of the Animal Nutrition and Veterinary Medicines Unit at DG Sante, and Ariane van der Stappen, Policy Officer, Veterinary Medicines, DG Sante, that will frame the legislative context. We also have representatives from industry trade associations that will present their perspective on Brexit preparedness. I would now like to hand over to the European Commission that will make some opening remarks. Christian, the floor is yours.
First of all, thank you very much, Ivo, for the invitation which you have extended to us. It is, of course, with pleasure that we are present. Let me just say that we regret very much not to have been able to come in person. That was largely because of a session we just had with the European Parliament in Strasbourg, and then it was no longer possible to come to London. So we try our best to follow the events and be present and helpful and participating in the dialogue now here via these technical means. Let me just start with a statement which might seem banal, but I think we need to remind ourselves time and again of this. This is a situation in which we are now living that we have not chosen, that has been decided, so we have to live with it, and we have to see what the consequences are. Of course, always thinking in terms of what can best be done in order to make it work and make our work continue, your work continue. But nonetheless, we need to see that we need to clarify, first of all, what are the legal consequences that we cannot change, but that we can clarify in order to respect them, then in consequence, and to see what they lead to. So this is our major activity, which we are obliged to fulfill. The United Kingdom notification end of March 2017 of its intention to withdraw from the Union means that all Union law ceases to apply to the UK from 30 March 2019, and then the United Kingdom will become a third country unless a ratified withdrawal agreement establishes another date. The UK withdrawal will have consequences for businesses and for the work of the medicines regulatory network. The Commission, the agency, national competent authorities, along with the UK one, have a collective responsibility to ensure preparedness of the system so that we can continue to deliver on the expectations and needs of patients for continuous supply of medicines. Within the EU regulatory framework and network, the national regulatory authorities, the European Medicines Agency, the Commission have been working hand in hand since March of last year to map out the challenges, both legal and operational, and to put in place and implement the mitigating measures. One challenge for the EU 27 as a whole is then to take over the workload and expertise that is currently carried out by the UK. This is also an opportunity for all member states to increase their level of expertise and contribute further to the EU regulatory network. Some member states have already started investing in extra resources. For centrally authorized medicines, EMA, together with the EU 27 member states, have developed a methodology for the redistribution of the work that is currently carried out by the UK, relating to the evaluation and monitoring of medicines, notably. The situation is still more complex for national approvals, given the volume of procedures and the complexity inherent to the process. So here the bodies, the coordinating group, are working on solutions for the redistribution of the work to new reference member states. We have actively informed pharmaceutical associations and companies about the necessity to adapt timely the processes and to consider changes to the terms of the marketing authorization in order to ensure their continuous validity and exploitation once the UK has left the Union. We are well aware of the challenges that marketing authorization holders face to proceed with necessary legal requirements, in particular to adapt the manufacturing and distribution channels. The challenges are possibly bigger for small and medium enterprises. In addition to the complexity of the necessary adaptations for companies, we understand that the uncertainty of the negotiations is a source of concern and a reason for some companies to adopt a wait-and-see approach rather than to act proactively to ensure full preparedness by March 2019. You will see that here is the main point of the message we want to send to you later on. The purpose of the discussion today is not to discuss political aspects or to speculate on the outcome of negotiations. However, I would rather like to share with you some basic facts in order to show that waiting entails risks. So this is the main point. When you now look at the first slide, which is here, also on the screen, the UK's withdrawal from the European Union entails several main work strands. There is first of all the Withdrawal Agreement, so-called Article 50 agreement. There is the question of a transition period, which would technically be part of the Article 50 agreement. And then a third step would be the question of the future relationship after the transition period. The bottom line is always that the UK will be a third country on the 30th of March next year. So the second slide, please. If we now look at the first thing, the withdrawal agreement, this is about the winding down, so to say, of the EU membership. A draft text has been published. The EU and the UK have agreed at negotiators' level on parts of the text indicating areas of agreement, others of disagreement, and where further clarifications are needed. So we are, in other words, in the middle of the negotiation on this withdrawal agreement. Also to see that the withdrawal agreement has to be ratified by both sides, especially in the Parliament. Also the European Parliament will evaluate progress. Next slide, please. If we look then at the transition period, what we can say about that. The transition period is now a concept and a proposal, so to say. So according to it, the full acquis will apply to the UK, including the marketing authorizations, and which will apply then to the UK. There is a dynamic reference which we need to take in account. That's to say that there will be acquis that starts to apply during the transition period. It's not yet ready before. So this will be taken into application as well. But according to this concept, there will be no UK participation in EU institutions or EU bodies. Bodies like also the European Medicines Agency's Management Board. There will also be no UK participation in member state meetings, although there could be exceptions, but rather of the kind of observer exceptions. And these meetings include also committees and regulatory committees that are linked to the Medicines Agency. There will be no UK role as a leading authority, namely as a reference member state or for rapporteurship. Nonetheless, there would be a full role of the Court of Justice and the other institutions. So this is so far the plan. Next slide, please. The transition period would also in that plan extend until 31 December 2020. So as I said before, this has to be still negotiated, agreed and ratified. So that is a huge program, which means that one cannot be certain what the outcome will be. In a very wide respect, you do not know now, we cannot know now the details of what are the rules applicable, nor even in the extreme can we know whether there will be a transition period. This is just an objective and intention which is shared by both the UK and the EU, but when it comes to contents, maybe the ideas are different. So that leads to the careful recommendation, careful but strong recommendation, do not rely on the transition period, and even more so not on a specific concept of a transition period. So the bottom line, the only thing of which we can be reasonably sure, is that the UK will be a third country, and this needs to be the orientation point of yours and our preparations. Next slide, please. Even more open, totally open, so to say, is what the future economic relationship will be. There are, as you can see, in the colorful country symbols, there are different models that are either on the way to be concluded or which are already since a long time in application. And this provides some orientation about what possibilities are in relation between EU and third countries, but it's in no way any sort of guarantee or any sort of likelihood that the one or the other orientation will actually apply. Now the problem is the uncertainty that is linked to it, the uncertainties that are around the question about what will be the case after end of March of next year. And the central problem herewith is that clarifications of this point will come, of course, but will come too late in order to adapt for all of us our preparations for this time period from next year on. So, and as this will be certainly too late to start and to orient the preparations, we can only underline 3 times that we cannot wait with implementing preparedness measures until then. So we have to start as a point of orientation with what we already can say, and that is the bottom line: the UK as a third country. Next slide, please. You see here then the next phases of the Brexit negotiations as they are planned and agreed between the UK and the EU. So it's a full calendar for the remaining 12 months, of course, which is then from roughly the half the picture onwards, up to then the ratification phase, which should happen from the autumn already of this year. So time for actual substantial negotiations is very short. So the next slide, please. In order to help the preparations for you and for ourselves, of course, the Commission has published information notices, also together with the Medicines Agency, to raise awareness of stakeholders about the consequences of the UK becoming a third country. We have done this together with the Medicines Agency for Pharmaceuticals, and similar notices were also published by the coordinating bodies for human and veterinary medicines. In view of the considerable uncertainties, in particular concerning the content of a possible withdrawal agreement, marketing authorization holders need to think of legal repercussions which need to be considered when the United Kingdom becomes a third country. Therefore, again to underline, preparedness is a matter of today, when you see also the timetable and timeframes which are very short. As you can see in the following slide, there are many areas to get prepared. We understand that many companies have put already in motion preparedness plans. For those who haven't done yet, it is high time that they start. Preparing is a matter for all, as it is ensuring continuous supply of medicines for patients, which is the ultimate objective, of course. So can we have the next slide, please? Here you have marketing authorizations related to obligations, and especially the need to establish a number of institutional actors, so to say, organizational actors in the European Union. This will, I hope, not be totally new to you. This is the essential change that will take place with the date of end of March of next year. Following slide, please. The difficulty is, of course, that, as I said, the details of the withdrawal and the transition period are not yet known. There was a lot of discussion ongoing, a lot of indications, but little certainty, except about the date of end of March of next year, one can say. But for all of the other conditions, except the fact that the UK will be a third country, and with the corresponding legal consequences. Apart from this, many other items remain uncertain. They will clarify only when, for a start of preparation, it is too late. So we have to start preparing from now on. And we have to live with uncertainty, so we have to prepare in view of the only thing that is known, and that is the transfer of the UK into a third country. So this is what we need to prepare for. Unfortunately, I mean, as you know, in negotiations, one of the main principles is that nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. So, of course, we will have, we hope, stepwise clarifications between the UK and the EU, but not to forget that all of this is not definitely certain until the end of the whole process. This is what we have to live with, and this is why we have to take the bottom line of the UK as a third country from end of March of next year as an orientation point for our preparations on both sides, the private actors and the regulatory institutions. Thank you very much for your attention.